Hi, everyone. I'm Cecilia Curtis, and I just want to welcome you to the Friendship Tour podcast, where we talk about the true gift of friendship with some of my truest friends. We talk about making friends, maintaining healthy friendships, and everything that happens in between. My friend, Wendy Alleyne, is back today to talk about being left out. She was here last season and we talked about how our friendship grew apart, then back together. And we touched upon some pretty serious topics along the way, like grief and depression. If you missed those episodes, I really encourage you to go back and listen. To be honest, they're actually two of my favorite episodes. So thank you, Wendy, for coming back. Today's episode is completely different, but thank you. I'm really, really glad that you're here today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Sil. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, Wendy, we have been friends since ninth grade, and I recorded an episode with Lauren a couple weeks ago about feeling left out. And I thought more about it. I was actually sitting in church the very next day after I recorded with Lauren, and I felt like we just missed some of it. Lauren and I talked a lot about what it feels like to be left out. What if you're always left out, digging and doing some work to figure out if it's something you're doing or if it's just you haven't met your tribe yet and that's why you're left out. But I feel like there's still more to it. And I started wondering if maybe it's a good thing to be left out sometimes. And I thought of you. And why did I think of you? Because we've been friends so long. You've been there when I was left out, and you've been there when I probably should have been left out, but wasn't left out. So I thought about you and I felt very strongly that we needed to talk. I was sitting in the choir stand listening to the sermon with one ear and thinking about you in this episode with the other ear. But I texted you and I was like, "What do you think?" And you said, "Yes, let's do it. There's a lot more that we could talk about." So, thank you for agreeing to do this today. So when Lauren and I were talking, I told this story about two friends who went out and got tattoos without me. You haven't heard the episode yet, so for those who've heard it, I might be rehashing a little bit, but by the time we recorded, that episode wasn't out. So you haven't heard the story yet, but I talked about two friends, I did not use names, who went out and got tattoos without me when we were young adults. And I felt really left out for a minute. Surprise, that was you.
I know
You were
exactly
one,
what you're talking about now.
yes,
Okay.
yes, you were one of the people who I felt left me out. You went and you got the tattoos. And at first I was like, why didn't I get invited to get a tattoo? And I felt some kind of way about it. But then I thought about it and I realized I was not meant to be there. I just wasn't, for a couple of reasons. One is that I'm a little bit OCD about some things. And in some ways, I don't care about some stuff, and other things I care a lot about. And I think if I had gotten a tattoo, doesn't matter how great the tattoo was, how great the artist was. If I had been there and for some reason decided to join you in getting a tattoo, I know in my heart I would have spent the rest of my life staring at that tattoo and wondering if it was crooked. Like that's just how I am. I think a lot of my friends who know me very well know that that's true. I would have obsessed over the tattoo forever. And God knows that is true. Like, He knows how He made me. And I feel like being left out spared me from that feeling of, is my tattoo crooked? Did I mess this up? Is it, like I just would have
Right.
been way too weird about it. Um, then there was the other part that maybe I just would have ruined your fun. I know that for better or worse, I'm a bit of a prude. Like I can be. Sometimes I'm just not that much fun in certain types of situations. So I wouldn't have wanted to be there and make it not fun for you and for the other friends who got the tattoo. I would have been the Debbie Doubter, like, are you sure you want it? Are you sure you want it right there? Are you sure you wanted to say that? Are you sure you wanted to do that? And that wouldn't have been fun for anyone. So once I like thought about it and realized I wasn't actually meant to be there, I was okay with it. And you and I were still friends, and the other young lady and I were still friends, and everything was cool. But at first, it hurt. At
Hmm.
first, it definitely hurt. Do you remember that?
I do. I really
Yeah.
do. And I mean, I remember us talking about it around each other about, oh my gosh, what about like getting a tattoo? Again, we were at the age where it was like we were trying to free ourselves from and do things that we felt we made the decision on. And
Hmm.
I do remember talking with you and the other friend about it because we used to hang out, and you weren't interested. You were like, what? Like, and honestly, um, I was kind of questioning it as well. But that was around the time that, again, in our last episode that we talked, my grandma passed away. So for
Hmm.
me, I really didn't have a sense of self. I just was trying to find something fun to do. And I thought getting a tattoo would be great. Now that probably wouldn't have been something I did if my grandma was still alive because she didn't believe in that.
Hmm.
But it was just something like I'm going to make this decision and I'm going to do it. And then the other friend was like, "Oh, okay, me too." And yeah, you weren't for it. You sure? And I wasn't really sure. I remember you're like, what are you gonna get? And I really didn't know. I was just excited that I was able to get it, and we did it. And yes, to your point, I obsessed over this tattoo. I did not
Do
like.
you?
Oh my god! I first of all, I picked the tattoo out of a book while I was in the like. I had no idea what I was going to get. All I knew it was going to be my name. But then it was
Oh.
like, but with what? And it was a flower, and it ended up looking like a weed flower because I like turquoise. And
Mm-hmm.
so I picked the color turquoise, but when you put it on my skin, it turns green. So it was not what I expected it to be. So yeah.
I don't actually remember having any conversations about tattoos before you came back with a tattoo. I don't remember ever talking about it. So I think it must have just been, I mean, we were young. We talked about everything.
Right.
So I'm glad that you heard me, even though I don't remember
Yeah, it wasn't
ever
my
talking about
intention
it.
to leave you out, but like looking back, I can see how you felt that way. But it was
Hmm.
more of, oh, Syl's not going to want to do this. So let's go get it.
Yeah, and it's all good. I mean, I'm happy that I was left out, and that was just a very very small example of how maybe being left out wasn't a bad thing for
Right.
me. You
No.
know, and I then started thinking about other times that I was left out and, maybe God actually protected me or friends worked together to protect me from a situation that I really didn't want to be involved in. Maybe I didn't even know I didn't want to be involved in, or I just wasn't meant to be there.
Hmm.
And there was this other situation. Maybe we were about the same age. Um, I had these two friends at school and I liked them. We were cool. We hung out. We chatted a lot at school, but we didn't hang out outside of school. And I never understood why. I never understood why they didn't invite me to hang out outside of school. We were the ones in the back of the classroom, like laughing, joking about stuff, but that's where it ended. They never invited me. And then they would come back on Monday after a fun weekend and tell me all about the weekend, but the stories never included me. And I felt some kind of way about that. So I asked them why they never included me. And I maybe didn't just ask them. Like maybe I even nagged them a little bit. Like, how is it that y'all go and you never invite me? Why don't you invite me? So they were very kind and friendly about it all. And they were like, all right, next time we hang, you're coming with us. Next time we're gonna call you. And they did. So the next time they called me, they invited me to go. And I wasn't driving, so I had to be a little younger, but my parents drove me to the one girl's house. My parents don't know any of this story. So, yeah. But my parents drove me to the one young lady's house, and it was a gorgeous day. We decided we were going to go for a walk. So we start walking, we pick up the other girl, and you know me, like I thought that was the whole day. I thought that's what we were going to do, right? I mean, you know me and you knew
Right.
me then. So I thought that was the event. I thought just hanging out with them was going to be it. Well, we kept walking to an apartment building, and we went in this apartment, and there were three of us, the girls, and there were all these guys. And they were older guys, and they were all nice and calm and respectful, but I did not like the way it felt. I didn't like the ratio of guys to girls. I didn't like that they were older. It was just not an environment where I felt comfortable. Well, I was like, what are we going to do here? It didn't feel like a big deal, but what are we going to do here? So they took out cards. Everybody played cards. We played spades. It was fun. Everyone was laughing. And I was thinking, okay, this isn't so bad. It's not such a big deal. Then out comes the beer and the alcohol.
Oh,
And people start drinking. And I was like, okay, this is too much for me. I wasn't drinking, but I didn't want to be in that environment anymore. So they started drinking. Then out came the weed. Then everybody started smoking and snacking and drinking. And I knew that it was too much for me. This is not at all where I belonged. So I needed to figure out how to get out of the situation. I did not want to call my parents. I did not, because they had given me a little bit of extra freedom by taking me to this house, all of it. I just didn't want to call them. Didn't want to call my parents. So I went in the back room. We didn't have cell phones at the time. I went in the back room and I called you. I don't know if you remember any of this happening.
I don't. But
Okay. Well, I went in the back room and I called you, and I was whispering, you were whispering. I don't know why you were whispering on the other end, but you were whispering, like, what you gonna do? And I was like, well, I need you to come get me, because you were older. So you had your driver's license a couple months before I did. I wanted you to come get me so that my parents didn't have to know, but so I felt safe. And you were willing to come get me, but your brother had the car.
mm,
And I was like crushed, devastated. And then while I was on the phone with you, the cops came to the door.
oh no.
Yes. So when I heard the cops at the door, I felt like my whole future just flashed before my eyes. I envisioned them banging down the door and arresting everyone, and I was underage, and there were drinks and drugs, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to go to college. I'm not going to be able to find a man. I'm never going to get married. I'm going to have to, like all the dramatic things just went through my mind. And in the end, the cops were like, it's cool. Have a good day. I don't know why that was what they said, but that's all they said. Like, turn the music down. It's cool. Have a good day. And everything went fine. The guys who were there remained respectful and kind. And my friends, we all laughed and stuff. But I knew in my heart that I had messed up.
Mhm.
My friends told me week after week that they had all these fun times without me, but they never invited me because I think, they knew that wasn't really my vibe. But I pushed it. I kept pushing to be included in something that wasn't for me. I was very involved in school and, at church. But once the official things at school were over, like the football game was over, the cheerleading stuff, the play, the singing thing, I was home on Saturday nights at 7 p.m. watching Star Trek. Like, I was watching Star Trek, and I'm talking Star Trek The Next Generation with Captain Jean-Luc Picard, like Jean-Luc Picard and Will Riker and Dr. Deanna Troi. That was my Saturday night. I mean, it really truly was. So for me to be in that environment was just completely foreign to me. And again, I'm not saying anyone did anything wrong, but it was a completely foreign environment that I didn't
And I
want to
think
be in.
it went against who you were, right?
Right.
So even though that may have been okay for them, in
Hmm.
your heart, that's not what you found fun or joy doing.
Right.
So, like you said, it wasn't that it was terrible. And yes, like you said, everybody was respectful, but this just
Mhm.
wasn't your scene. This wasn't
It
your
wasn't.
vibe. So, a lot of times people already know that about you or individuals that they
Yeah.
encounter. And like they may like things that you may not like. And so they are protecting you from not including you because they know that that's not something Cecilia would want to do. So it really isn't an exclusion per se, or it's not negative,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's not always, and that's kind of how I always felt like it being excluded was is just not a negative thing all the time. It
Yeah.
actually I'm supposed to be where I'm supposed to be. I'm meant to be. And
Right.
sometimes I have gotten myself in situations just like yours. And no, the men weren't as respectful. I've been in a bad
Mm,
situation when I was like 13, wanting to fit in with my older sisters and them. So I had that same situation, and someone actually lied to me and said this is where everybody was hanging out because I was trying to find where everybody was, and it was really just him.
mm,
And so but God protected me and got me out of
yes.
there. Yeah, but sometimes it's not always like forcing yourself to be a part of something where you're not being included in is not a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I just wanted to talk about, like how people do feel left out and people do get left out. And it sometimes just sucks. Like it sucks to feel like you're the person who's been left out, but it's not always a bad thing. When I started thinking about those two really kind of silly situations back from high school, I then started considering all the other things I was left out from. And I was in church, like, and thank you, God, for not letting me go to that party. And thank you, God, for not letting that boy ask me out. And thank you, God, for protecting me from like this whole list of
Yeah.
things that as a young person, I felt left out. Or even as an adult, I felt like, well, why didn't the coworkers invite me to this? Why didn't they invite me to that? Because they were sitting around talking about stuff I didn't want to talk about. And half of them got fired 2 weeks later. Just you don't always see in real time how God is protecting you. You don't always see the doors and the windows that He's closing, um, but He's there. He's there. And I'm thankful for the things I didn't experience because of that protection, because of that feeling left out experience. I'm glad for things that I didn't have to learn the hard way,
Hmm.
quite frankly.
Yeah.
So have you, sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, I agree with you totally, and I think reflecting back, you see all the things that He has protected you from,
Yeah.
and that is even my prayer for my kids. Like, Lord, protect them from themselves. They're still young,
Mm,
and they're curious. They want to know.
right.
They want to be validated. They want to feel included. They, all of these things, of why we want, or why we even feel bad when we're being left out, and we want to be included. It has to do with something within.
Mm, that's good. That's good.
Mhm. I know that there has been friends that felt left out because you and I always were together.
Yeah.
Um, but it was not intentional, and it was just because we enjoy certain things. And even when we would invite some of our friends over to hang out with us, they would be like, it's boring.
Yeah.
They would say, now me and you were so used to this, like,
I
what?
know.
Well,
Like, what
like,
do you
we
mean
have
it's boring? The Klingons are amazing. What are
right.
you talking
Like,
about?
we're eating. Like, we would cook. We would make. Well,
Yeah.
one of my favorites was you would make toasted peanut butter and jelly.
Did I?
Yes. Oh my God. That was my first time ever having toasted peanut butter and jelly, and the peanut butter was so warm, and I was just, I'm going over to have peanut butter and jelly, toasted peanut butter and jelly. But yeah.
I don't ever remember having toasted peanut butter and jelly.
Mm.
So I'm gonna have to try it now. I'll have to try
Yeah.
it
You
again.
would put it in the toaster, and then it was so nice and warm. I was like, wow, this is
Hmm.
different. Yeah. At your
I
house.
will give it another shot then. I'm sure I have not had it as an adult, that's for sure.
Oh,
So
okay.
that must have been my first couple attempts at cooking, thinking I was like making something hot. So
Yeah.
that's cooking. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, for me, that I enjoyed that. But yeah, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Those are the things that I kind of remember, feeling left out. But then as I became an adult, I started feeling left out by my kids,
Hmm.
at work. But when I think back, like, it was the book, The Four Agreements, and it was like, why I started digging into the root, to kind of figure out, why am I taking it so personally? Like, so
Hmm.
when my kids would be talking to my husband for advice, why am I taking it personal that they left me out and they didn't include me, and I may overhear it, and I would
Hmm.
feel some type of way. But it was really, I got over it because what they were talking about, I handled it and would have handled it way different than the advice their dad gave them, and the advice
Yeah.
that their dad gave them actually was probably better than the advice that I would have gave them. So they actually knew who to go to. But they came to me sometimes and didn't go to their dad. So how am I feeling some type of way when they do it to him? Right?
Right.
Like that's just. I think we have to look within ourselves, of why we are offended that we're being
Mhm.
left out, and is there something within us that we need to, like you said, get over. Like you kind of broke it down when you said you felt some type of way about the tattoo, but then when you thought about it, you were like, I wouldn't have wanted to do it anyway, and I probably would have made them feel bad. Like once you kind of process it, it makes sense and you move on.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad thing to be, like you said, it's not a bad thing to be left out. And I do believe that a lot of times you're being left out for a reason, and it's okay. And when you want
Mhm.
to be included, like you did, you asked. But sometimes now God is trying to protect you,
Yeah.
but you're going around his protection
Right.
because of something within that you wanted to be a part of, and now you see why you were never a part of
Yeah.
it. So it's like sometimes you just kind of, not sweat the small stuff and not take it so personally, and really
Yeah.
kind of move on beyond that. Because to your point, even at work, I would feel like I was getting left out, but I was, because like again, I always wanted to do the right thing. I'm not bullying. I'm not talking about people. I'm not. So if that's what the water cooler talk, if that's what's going on, I don't want no part of it. So
Right.
yeah, that's probably what they were doing, and they knew I didn't want no part of it, so they didn't include me. So I'll be like, okay, yep, I'm good, and I'm not mad at you, like.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah, I think at this point I'm not mad when I feel left out. I'm not saying I would never be mad, but I can't think of anything right now that I would be mad about being left out, because it's either not for me because they're not my people, or the events are not for me. For some reason it's just not for me. Um, it's not my tribe. It's not my day. Maybe God has something over here he wants me doing. Like maybe I'm supposed to be over there meeting some amazing people today. Or I don't know. There's got to be some deeper reason that I'm excluded today. I'm not saying that to say I always can see all of life in that positive way, but
mhm.
yeah, feeling left out. It might suck for a minute, but yeah, dig a little bit, see
Yeah,
why.
yeah,
See why.
absolutely.
Yeah. That's the second time, maybe even the third time, that book, The Four Agreements, came up in an episode. So I will need to check it out. I don't know what that book is about.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I'll send you the link, but it's awesome, and it's a book that I read at 40,
mhm,
and I was just kind of trying to, I was soul searching,
mhm,
and I was just trying to, like, again, continue to evolve, um, and raising kids and then having them shift into grown-ups. I have now five kids. I have eight kids total, but five of them are above 18.
mm,
And, I was feeling some type of way, and I wasn't being impeccable with my words. And that's what the book talks about, that.
mm,
And so, yeah, it was, that book really helped me. And I had to apply all of it. It took me about 3 years to really get through the book, and felt like I learned something and grew from that. And I remember one of my 24-year-old son said, "You're so zen now."
mm.
I was never described as zen, and so it really
Interesting.
works. It really, if you really are serious about improving yourself, that book really does help.
I don't think anyone has ever called me Zen, but my dad said, "You're so laid back. I think you've been in California too long." And at first I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, I kind of get that. I don't know that it's California or that it's just getting older, but I try not to get as worked up about things as I used to get years ago. I'm not saying I'm there. I'm not saying I'm
Oh
there,
yeah,
but
I mean, I still
I
have
definitely think there's some things that I
yeah,
could still work on. But there's some other things that other people are like, oh, she's not upset about that anymore. So that's
right.
good. That's progress, right? That's
Yeah, that's
progress.
it. That's all you can do. Like, um, is really just work on making better choices day by day. And I think when you have that relationship with God, he holds you accountable, to how you're like, you can't justify
Mhm.
certain behaviors because it's all about God's love.
Any other thoughts on feeling left out?
It's okay to be left out.
Hmm.
It's okay to be left out.
It's okay to be left out.
Yeah.
And you're not the only one who's ever been left out. I think everyone can relate to feeling left out in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And you're probably going to get left out again, but it's okay. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay. Yeah.
And sometimes you got to ask yourself, like, I've left people out, like your story, right? That wasn't my intention, but it was a
Right.
reason, right? So when I start feeling left out, I got to think about times like that. Now I have that as an example, but that wasn't my intention. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I just think, we got to kind of stop and reflect, and one understand why we feel so negative about feeling left out, because
Mhm.
like we said earlier, it's not a negative, does not have to be negative, and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Wendy, Wonder Wendy, lifelong friend, one of my favorite people in the world. Thank you for everything, for your continued support in my life, and for being such a great friend. I love you.
I love you too, Sil. Talk to you.
Talk to you soon and see you soon. I'll
I know,
call
I
you about
can't
the
wait.
details. I know. I'll call you about the details, but I'll see you soon.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.